At some point in life, the roles between parents and children begin to change. After years of raising, guiding, and sacrificing for them, one day you notice that something is different. Perhaps they ignore your advice, dismiss your opinions, or talk down to you. Even worse, they may make you feel like a burden, and that's painful. If your children have started showing you less respect than you deserve, you may feel upset, even angry. You might want to remind them of everything you've done for them, all the years you spent putting them first. But here's the reality. Getting angry won't solve the problem. In fact, it often makes things worse. There is a far more effective way to regain their respect without fighting, arguing, or harboring resentment. Today, I'll share 6 actions you can take when your children don't respect you. These simple, powerful shifts in how you respond can completely change the way they view you. Some of these might surprise you, but if you stick with me until the end, you'll learn how to reclaim your place as a respected and valued figure in their lives. Let's dive in. Action 1. Stop seeking their approval. A common mistake parents make, especially as they age, is trying too hard to please their children. You may have noticed yourself doing this, going out of your way to accommodate them, saying yes when you want to say no, and putting their needs before yours, hoping that if you do enough, they'll appreciate you more. The painful truth is this: the more you chase their approval, the less respect you'll get in return. Respect isn't earned through self-sacrifice, it's earned through self-respect. If you're constantly bending over backward, giving in, or trying to keep the peace, you're teaching them that your feelings don't matter. Once they start believing that, it's easy for them to take you for granted. I once knew a woman named Margaret, a strong, independent person in her youth, but as she grew older, she let her children make all the decisions. She changed her schedule for their needs, kept her opinions to herself, and even overlooked the way they spoke to her. "I just want to keep the family together," she said to me once. But what happened? Her children stopped valuing her. They began seeing her as someone who would always adjust, always agree, and always stay silent. She thought she was keeping the peace, but in reality, she was losing her voice. If your children don't respect you, the first step isn't to demand respect. It's to stop acting like you need it. Set boundaries. Say no when necessary. Speak your mind, even if they don't like it. When you start respecting yourself, they'll begin seeing you differently, and with time, that respect will return. Action 2. Don't argue. Lead by example. When your children dismiss your opinions, talk over you, or treat you disrespectfully, your instinct might be to argue, to remind them of everything you've done and demand they listen. But let me tell you something that will save you years of frustration. Arguing doesn't work. Think about it. When was the last time you convinced someone to respect you by fighting for it? Respect isn't gained through words. It's earned by your presence, by how you carry yourself, and by how you respond when others try to test your patience. If you meet disrespect with anger, all you're doing is confirming what they already believe, that they have power over you. I once knew a man named Frank, a retired teacher who had spent his career leading with confidence. But at home, his grown children started treating him like an afterthought. They ignored his advice, disregarded his concerns, and at times even laughed when he attempted to correct them. Initially, Frank responded by arguing, trying to prove that he still deserved their respect. However, the more he argued, the worse the situation became. Then, one day, Frank decided to make a change. Instead of arguing, he began to truly listen. He stopped seeking respect through words and started presenting himself as a man who already possessed it. He spoke with calm wisdom, without the need to win, and gradually, his children started noticing. They saw a man who wasn't desperate for their approval, who didn't feel the need to prove himself, but who was simply a figure of strength. If your children don't respect you, don't fight them for it. Demonstrate what respect looks like through how you treat yourself, maintain your dignity, speak confidently, and above all, never lower yourself to their level. By standing firm with grace, they will feel it, and in time, they'll follow your example. If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I suggest subscribing and turning on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating great content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move on. Action 3. Withdraw emotional dependence. One of the hardest lessons to learn as you age is that you can't rely on your children for emotional fulfillment. You may love them dearly and want their love and respect in return, but the moment they realize you need them to feel valued, the power in the relationship shifts. Here's the truth. People, even your own children, respect those who are emotionally independent. When you depend on them for validation, affection, or attention, it puts pressure on them, and instead of feeling grateful, they begin to feel burdened. They may start pulling away, treating you with impatience or even irritation, and the more you chase their love, the less freely they will offer it. I once knew a woman named Helen. She was a kind, loving mother who had given everything to her children, but as they grew older and became busy with their own lives, she found herself waiting by the phone, hoping they would call. When they didn't, she would call them, often, too often, reminding them how much she missed them and wished they would visit more. But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them away. They started seeing her calls as an obligation rather than something they looked forward to. Then, one day, Helen did something different. She stopped waiting and stopped calling first. Instead, she focused on herself, took up new hobbies, spent time with friends, and took care of her own happiness. And something unexpected happened. Her children started calling more. They began to value her time, seeing her as someone with a full life of her own. The lesson is simple. The less you rely on your children to make you feel needed, the more they will begin to appreciate your presence. When you show them that you can stand strong on your own, they will respect you, not out of obligation, but because they genuinely admire the life you've created for yourself. Action 4. Set boundaries and enforce them. One of the biggest reasons children lose respect for their parents is because the parents allow it. If you let your children speak to you disrespectfully, dismiss your opinions, or treat you as if your time and feelings don't matter, they will continue to do so. Not because they are bad people, but because, especially with family, people will always treat you the way you permit them to. Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting off your children or creating conflict. It means calmly and firmly deciding what behavior you will and won't tolerate, and more importantly, enforcing those boundaries when they're crossed. I remember a man named Robert, a retired businessman who had always run his company with discipline and confidence. However, when it came to his adult children, he struggled. They would interrupt him, dismiss his concerns, and even criticize the way he lived his life. At first, he tolerated it, telling himself it wasn't worth the fight. But over time, he realized that by staying silent, he was teaching them that their behavior was acceptable. So, one day, Robert decided to change his approach. When his son interrupted him, he calmly said, "I'll continue speaking when you're ready to listen." When his daughter dismissed his opinion, he simply responded, "You don't have to agree with me, but I expect you to respect me." And when they kept pushing his boundaries, he made it clear. If they couldn't treat him with respect, he wouldn't spend time with them. And you know what happened? They started listening. At first they resisted, but eventually they realized that their father wasn't backing down. They saw that he valued himself enough to demand respect, and as a result, they began to give it to him. If your children don't respect you, it's time to ask yourself, are you allowing it? Because if you don't set boundaries, they won't set them for you. And if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 4 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating valuable content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move on. Action 5. Stop giving without appreciation. One of the quickest ways to lose respect is to keep giving to people who don't appreciate it. As parents, we tend to do this more often than we realize. We give our time, energy, and support, even when it's not acknowledged, even when it's taken for granted, or when we're met with nothing but entitlement. But here's the truth. When you give to someone who doesn't appreciate it, you're not building love or respect. You're building expectation. They stop seeing your kindness as something valuable and start viewing it as something they're entitled to. And when you stop giving, they won't feel grateful. They'll feel inconvenienced. I once knew a man named George, a father who had always been generous with his children. He helped them financially whenever they needed it, dropped everything to assist them, and even rearranged his life to accommodate their needs. But instead of gratitude, he was met with complaints. They didn't thank him. They just expected more. And the worst part was, when he finally needed their help, they were too busy. Then one day, George made a change. He stopped overextending himself. He stopped offering help before they even asked. And most importantly, he began saying no when necessary. At first, his children were frustrated. They didn't understand why he wasn't going out of his way for them anymore. But over time, something shifted. They started valuing his time. They started appreciating his efforts because they finally realized his generosity wasn't unlimited. It was a gift, not a guarantee. If you feel like your children don't respect your time, effort, or kindness, take a step back and ask yourself, are you giving more than you should? And if so, what would happen if you stopped? Because when you show people that your generosity is tied to respect, they will begin to treat it accordingly. Action 6. Build a life outside of them. One of the most effective ways to regain your children's respect is by showing them that your happiness doesn't revolve around them. As parents, it's natural to devote ourselves to our children and make them the center of our lives. But as we grow older, that dynamic changes. If you've spent your life prioritizing them, they may start viewing you as someone who has nothing else going on. People respect those who have their own purpose, interests, and fulfillment. If your children see that you rely on them for entertainment, validation, or meaning, they may begin to feel overwhelmed or, worse, view you as someone without a life of their own. I knew a woman named Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s. After her husband passed, she poured all her energy into her children's lives, constantly checking in, offering advice they didn't ask for, and hoping they would fill the space her husband had once occupied. But instead of drawing them closer, it pushed them away. They visited less, their calls became shorter, and Eleanor felt more isolated than ever. Then she made a change. She joined a book club, started traveling with friends, and volunteered at a local community center. She stopped making her children her sole focus, and something amazing happened. Her children began reaching out more. They were curious about her new activities and admired her independence. They respected her more. If your children don't respect you, ask yourself, do they see you as someone with a full and meaningful life, or as someone waiting around for their attention? Because when you show them you're living, not just existing, they'll start to see you in a different light. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 6 below to let me know you're here. If you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you.